Hi friends, it's Becky, and it is time to settle in for another Bracelet Bash video. Now this will be a long video. A lot of my friends love to watch these while they're making something or just to have on all the way through from start to finish. But since I am making individual bracelets, I will also have a timestamp and chapters in this video. If you want to skip ahead to any of these, you're more than welcome to. But as with my other Bracelet Bash videos, this is a bracelet party and all of my beading friends are invited. When I usually do a Bracelet Bash video, I will do a sort of concept where like I'll make the same type of bracelet but with all of my different bead boxes, and that's a lot of fun to do. With this one, I'm going to be doing some different bracelets, but they're all going to be with the same theme, and that theme is fall. Like leaves, spiced drinks, the whole kit and caboodle. I am ready to dive right into fall and autumnal things. And so I've picked out some bead boxes that I think will work out well for this. Some of them are not October bead boxes, some of them were from September, but they all will fit this theme. So I am going to be using the October dollar bead box and bag. Look at all of that autumnal goodness. So we're going to be making some things from this one, and I'll share exactly which beads I'm using at the beginning of each bracelet as I'm making them. So I'm not going to be pulling them out right now with you while we go over this. I'm also going to use some beads. I still have some left from the Wild Mushroom Softflex design kit. It has some really great autumnally kind of color beads. We've got the Wendy Safari box from Sam's Bead Box. And so I'm going to be using some of these leaves and some of these other like warm ambery tones, and we're going to get a nice little fall bracelet out of that. And there'll be different types of bracelets, by the way. Some of them will be strung, some of them might have wire, some might be chain, some might have multiple strands, some might have other strands, but we're going to be doing different types of bracelets as well when we do this. And then we've also got my Kraftika box. There's some great autumnally kind of colors in here. This one had a really great balance, I thought, between like the spooky season theme and also the autumnal theme. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and that was also the October box from Kraftika. Then we have the Curated Bead Box, and this is the one that had the bee-themed things, and I'm going to be grabbing some of this fantastic fall mix, some of these gold beads from there for my design on that. I think we might do a memory wire bracelet for that one. We've also got, this was the September curated collections from Beads to Live By, and I had some ideas of things we could do with this. It's mostly seed beads, but we've also got some 2-hole beads, so I thought we could do maybe some 2-hole bead design with these. And speaking of 2-hole beads, I've got this month's 2-hole beads from my Adornable Elements, the Apricot Orchard, and the colors of my seed beads didn't quite scream autumn to me from this subscription, but my September subscription did. So I'm going to grab some of those colors, and we're going to have another 2-hole bead design that's going to be super fun to make for this bracelet. The bargain bead box for this month, it was more spooky season filled, but we did have some great fall colors and things in the September box. So I've got my sweater weather bargain bead box things here, and then I've got some stuff in my stash that I wanted to also throw out there for some autumnal themes. You know, maybe some pumpkin-y kind of fun things, maybe some ambery sort of other things that we'll have with that. And so I am going to be making at least 2 bracelets using my own stash and some beads that I have there that would be a lot of fun to make. So let me pull out my first box and we'll go over what I'm making with them. But before we start that, I'm going to just pull out my tools and show you what I'm using. I'm designing on my hobby worker board. It has, you've got my detritus up there, but it has all of these little sections where you can put the things that you're working on, and then a big beading area with all of this. It is one of my favorite bead boards on here. It does have a wooden thing so you can lift it up. I'll put a link to all of the tools that I use, all the bead boards, and to each of the bead boxes that I use in the description below. So some of the tools that I'm going to be using are my absolute tools of the trade. For all of these, we've got, these are like the basic ones that I always use. We've got flush cutters, we've got round nose pliers, we've got chain nose pliers, and a crimper. I will sometimes also use some 6-step bill making pliers, and sometimes if I'm doing some beaded chain, I may use a 1-step looper. We haven't completely gotten to that yet though, but we'll be doing that. So let's clear these out. I'll get out my bead box and we'll go over the materials for our first project. Alright, so for my first project, we're going to be using the dollar bead box and bag items. Dollar bead bag is an add-on subscription to the dollar bead box where you get some fire polish beads that go with everything. So I'm going to be using some of the 3mm fire polish beads, 4mm fire polish beads from that, and then some of these other beads that we got, like these Lucerna bicones. We've got some 6mm fire polish beads, these gorgeous Czech glass tulips with the copper wash on them, some fire polish rondelles, and more fire polish beads. It's going to be just fire polish all the time. And all of these were in the dollar bead box. I will put a link in the description to my unboxing for this, and a link to dollar bead box if you'd like to check it out. There is a coupon code you can use to get a certain dollar amount off of your first subscription if you wanted to check out that bead subscription. So my idea for this is a triple wrap bracelet, and that's going to be a bracelet that wraps around my wrist 3 times. Each wrap, each time it goes around my wrist, I want to be a different bead design. So it'll be interesting and fun, and it won't be all the same from start to finish. The tools that I'm using for this are going to be my flush cutters and my crimper. I love the magical crimper. It's my favorite way of crimping. So I'm going to be using that to crimp. If you use a different method to crimp, then you may want to also grab some bead covers or crimp covers, because the magical crimper makes a nice round smooth bead that doesn't scratch your skin, but the other crimping method sometimes leaves a little bit of a rough edge, and so a crimp cover will help protect your skin from that. Speaking of crimps, I am going to be using these 2x2 crimp tubes. I love these Softflex crimp tubes, and some Softflex wire. This is the Butterscotch Imperial Topaz. I think it's a great autumnal color for stringing this along, and all of these are like, I don't know, it's like the spices. You've got like cinnamon and nutmeg, you've got some vanilla, you've got some allspice. It's just going to be like a pumpkin spice kind of a flavor on here. So what I'm going to do is just grab this wire, and I'm going to very loosely wrap it around 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then give myself some extra room for crimping before we cut it off. So this will be long enough to go around 3 times. This is about, this board is 15 inches wide, so it's about 30 inches of wire that I've got here. One end of this is going to be used to anchor this large Czech glass hibiscus flower. It is a coin bead that has a hole going all the way through it. And I'm going to use this like a button for my closure. So I'm going to start with this getting put on the end, and then we'll start stringing us along as we go through here. And then on the end, on the other end, I'm going to make a loop to go around this, and that loop will have these 3mm fire polish beads. So I'm going to move these out of the way because we won't need them until the end. In fact, let's go ahead and just scooch them over here into my little organizer section so that they are out of the way while we are doing this. And let's see if I can get these organized in some specific directions. Right. Ooh, there's 7 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, do I want them going facing outwards or just going in the same direction? I think we're going to do the same direction since they're not even. And we can't even. There's 8 of these, so why don't I pop these into place between all of them. These are these 2 color, they've got like peridot plus the topaz. Absolutely gorgeous. And then these are just some copper fire polish beads. They're 4mm fire polish beads. I'm going to pop these in between each of these. Now I'm kind of estimating on the size here, just using my eyeballs. Keep in mind too that the size when it's on a bead board like this does not always translate to the size when it is wrapped around a wrist, because the bigger beads are going to push it out away from the wrist a little bit more. But we can still kind of estimate about how long that's going to be when it is strung up. And that's going to be about that long. So that's going to be a good size for us to go for the rest of these. Alright, so the next one. I don't know that we're going to need all of these, but this one might be a little bit more plain. Got some vanilla and clove. That's what I'm calling it for this, because we've got more of a dark brown color with little pops of vanilla in here. This is definitely my fall spices. Pumpkin spice. Kind of a bracelet. That's what I'm going for with this one. Alright. And similar-ish. Whoop, I just lost that guy. I'll have to go dig under the desk for it. These are rondelles, so they are going to take up a little less space on the strand than they do on my bead board, because they'll be sideways. You can string these on like a rod or something like that in order to get a more accurate feel of how long they'll be. They still won't tell you how well it'll fit on a wrist. So when I string each of my sections, I'm going to grab my bracelet mandrel once it's strung so that I can check that out. And I got my bracelet mandrel from my friend Heather Aston. I'll put a link to her email. I'll put her email in the description if you wanted to reach out to her and see if she has any available, because she does sell them. Alright. So far that is going to be my spicy little bracelet. So let me start with the end here with this bead. I'm going to put my wire through here and then bring it around. I'm going to get my crimp on here because this is just the first part of creating this. My crimp on my wire, and I'm going to want that on both ends of the wire. And we want it to go in the same direction through my crimp tube, like that. And then we're going to scooch this over here because I want to crimp it close to the bead, but I want it to be centered on the bead, so it'll crimp down here. Just using these to grab the wire to help center this. Pushing down with my fingernail on the crimp, pulling up with the wire just to get this nice and tight on there. This is my little trick that I do to turn a coin bead into kind of a button at the end of a bracelet so that you can do a little loop around it at the end of it and use it as a closure. It's cute and a fun way to include like a special button on a bracelet without having to have it like in the middle of everything. So now that that is close, I'm going to use my magical crimper. You can see that little concavity in there. And I'm going to make sure it's centered on both sides. Give it a smush so that it smushes down just the corners. Turn it at a 90-degree angle. The crimp, give it another smush. And then go around from different angles until you stop meeting resistance. And then you've got a nice, smooth little ball of crimp. So I'm going to take my flush cutters and snip off the end of my wire. And then put these tools out of the way so I can start stringing this on. And I'm just going to start at this end, string these guys on, see if I need to add more with my mandrel. After I've got these on. Now, one thing Jenny does when she does a triple strand bracelet or a triple wrap bracelet is she strings each portion separately and connects them with a magnetic clasp. Those are Jenny's bracelet trios that she does, which are super fun and super cute. If you haven't seen those yet, check out our channel for Jenny's bracelet trios, because she is super creative and has a lot of fun with them. So let's see how well this will fit on this bracelet mandrel. This is only about 6.5 inches. I'd like it to be a little bit longer down here. So I'm going to add a few more beads to this end here. might need to go duck under and pick up that guy that fell off to finish this up. If I can find them. Sometimes when beads jump off my desk, they fall, and then, oh, that's a totally different bead. They roll around and land in some corners that I don't normally expect them to be in. This one was under my chair. There we go. And I do have extras of like all of these beads except for these tulips and others, so they'll be able to fit a little bit differently. Okay, that is going to be about perfect for that. I'm just going to do a 7 inches on each of these for those wraps. That is a good amount for that first loop. And I think I want my second loop to be these tulips. So let's go from one end straight through up here, this top loop. And if that part is too short, I can just add more of these copper colored or copper finished fire polish beads to each end to stretch it out or lengthen it out for this section. Because one fun thing too that you can do with like a triple wrap bracelet is you can wear it as a necklace if you wanted to. And so having like the most interesting section be the middle section means that it'll be front and present if you wear it as a necklace. And it'll just be an asymmetrical design. So one side will have this and the other side will have that going up if you wear it as a necklace. I do like having things that are multiple ways of wearing them. So it can be either or. See, that is just a little bit on the shorter side of things, so I think I do need 2 more of these, and I'm going to put them on both ends. So that means unstringing this, and I'm just putting my hand over the beads so that when I pull the wire out, they don't go flinging everywhere, and adding that extra fire polish bead there at the beginning, and then we'll add another one to the end, and that'll get us about the same length as my first section. Thought about turning this off and editing it out, but a lot of my friends like to just hang out while they're watching these things with me. And so this is just a little extra of a visit section where we can just hang out and do stuff together while I'm stringing these guys back on. Like I said, we've got chapters, so if you'd like to skip ahead, you may. this end also needs an extra fire polish bead. Now, these are approximately the same length, so that makes me very happy because it means that they will fit nicely as a double wrap. And let's string on our second little group of beads, and these I've got extras of all of these so I can adjust my length as necessary once we've got all of these guys on here. This type of bracelet can be a really fun stash buster. You know, if you've got a stash of beads and you're like, what can I do with these? And they mostly go together, but you're not quite sure how. You can just start stringing them and then jump to different sections part way along and just keep going until you have a triple wrap, something that goes around 3 times. All the way. Oop. You're almost there. Very fun. I love making bracelets. One of the things I like most about bracelets is that, unlike earrings and necklaces, which you wear and then other people get to see, you get to look at what's on your wrist all day long when you're wearing them. Oh, that is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Let me grab my mandrel. 2, 3. And once I get that loop created on this end to go around here, I think that'll be done. I'm going to double check this on my wrist too. 1, 2. Oop, that's a little stiff so far. Let's loosen up some of those beads. There we go. Okay, I think I actually need to do another inch of beads here on this section. So let's grab a couple more of these. Measure 5 times and crimp once. That's the beater's version of the measure twice, cut once. Measure 3 times, crimp once. So that is going to get me all the way around, and that's going to get me also 3 different wraps, 3 different bead patterns, and I think I love that. So for this part, I'm going to be making a loop, and that loop is going to be beaded with these 3mm fire polish beads, which are just absolutely gorgeous. I love them. But I want to put my crimp on first. And we need to make sure that there's enough leeway and give in this wrap that it will be slinky and not stiff when it's worn. So I'm going to curl up the wrap bracelet. So that'll take out some of the slack on the wire while I'm working on this part. I've got my crimp on my wire. I'm going to put on, let's start with maybe 15 of these and then check and see if it fits around my flower. If it is too big, I can take some off. If it's too small, I can add more on. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Alright. And so to find out if it's big enough, I'm just pinching the wire here where it makes a loop, seeing how that fits around here. See how it fits around, but it's a little on the tight side. I'm going to add one more and see if that fits better. I would make it 16 total of these 3mm fire polish beads. I'm also going to twist the wire together so that it doesn't drift apart as much. And it does go through, but it doesn't go through so easily that I fear it will fall apart. So now that I've got my size right for my loop, and we've still got this all curled up to keep it from getting too stiff, I'm going to go back through my crimp and pull that through so that my loop loops. I'm just going to make sure that there's room on either side of the crimp, or in order for my crimper to fit, and also so that I don't accidentally crush some of these beads when I'm crimping. There we go. And once again, this is just for the magical crimper that I'm using just the crimp to close this up with. If you're using a different style of crimping, like a taco style crimper, then you may want to also use a crimp cover to cover up that crimp. And otherwise, we have wrap bracelet. Hold on, I'm going to put this on. 1, 2, 3. Now I've got all 3 strands, dollar bead box, dollar bead bag, and that is project number 1 for my Bracelet Bash. Let me get this cleared off, I'll pull out my second project, and we can get started on project number 2. Alright, so project number 2, we have Sam's Bead Box. This is the Wendy's Safari subscription box. This was from September, and so I'm going to be doing a double strand bracelet with this. So I've got 2 strands of wire, and I'm going to be using these larger Czech glass beads, where you've got these diagonally drilled amber color beads, these large fancy square beads, and then these sort of twisted nuggets in a smokier color. And these are going to be strung on with these coin beads, these wooden coin beads that were also in that box. And that's 1 strand. The second strand will be these small English cut amber colored beads with these 2-tone leaf beads with this dark brown and cream colored mix on there. And then I'm going to have a dangle using this larger jump ring. This is about a 13mm jump ring. Or is it 14? I know, it's something teen. And this Czech glass leaf bead. So we're going to have that dangling there. I've got some 6mm jump rings and a lobster clasp, some 2x2 crimp tubes, and I thought I'd just go ahead and stick with the Imperial Topaz beading wire. And since this is a double strand, I went ahead and used what was left on 2 different spools. It's funny because they're 2 different spools and they both say the same thing, but they are different colors. So since this is 2 double-stranded, it doesn't really matter that they're that different, but I just thought that was funny that both of these were different colors of the same color of beading wire. Doesn't happen that often. The tools that I'm using are some flush cutters. I'm going to be crimping with my magical crimper, and I've got a chain nose pliers that I'm going to be opening and closing my jump rings with. And I just realized, since this is double-stranded, that I am going to need more crimp tubes than that, so let me get a couple more out here. And then we can start stringing and assembling this together. But yeah, this was the September Sam's Bead Box. It's really, really cool one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these strands of wire and I'm just going to make a loop on each one of them just to close it up so I can start stringing on each of them. And to do that, I'm going to put on my crimp, bend my wire back through. Since I'm assembling with jump rings, I don't have to crimp this directly onto something. I can just make a loop on this one end, and I don't have to use a bead stopper on it or anything like that. So for this, I'm going to make sure that I get that concavity centered on my crimp. And I'm just going to make a little loop there at the end, give that a smush, get my ravioli going. It squishes down all 4 corners, turn it at a 90-degree angle, and then rotate this around and give it squishes at different angles until it stops resisting. And that's when you know it's done. So that one's done. Let's do the second one. This wire typically doesn't need wire guardians. It is very durable and sturdy wire, so that's why I'm leaving those off of this design. I typically don't use them when I use this wire. Alright. Now let's start with the first one, and that's going to be this. these larger beads. Alright, and this is going to take up about an inch or so, so as long as this, when it's on, comes within an inch of closing, I think we'll be good. I can just add a couple more of these beads from here, just to give myself a little extra wiggle room as far as what I can design with. I still have quite a few beads from this bead box that I can pull out if I need to for size on here. I think that should be good. Let's start stringing, and I can always unstring and put it back on there if I need to later. I'm just going to move my tools out of the way. So that stops that. If you start with your loop on there. That is not going through. So let me swap it out for a different wooden bead. There we go. Huh. Why are these wooden beads not... I need just a piece of 18 gauge wire. That'll do. A beading needle might work too, or an awl. There we go. Just clearing out this hole. I'll have to clean my beading mat when this is done. I didn't expect to be doing any woodworking when I was doing this. But you know what? It's totally fine. It is totally fine. I'm just gonna slide the end of this through this loop so that I can check on the size, maybe? Whoop, or not. Maybe I will put it around first. Or not. Okay, yeah, that's going to be just about perfect for the length that I want on this. Just about perfect. All right. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and put a bead stopper on here and start stringing my other strand, because I don't want to crimp this until I've got the other strand all strung. I'm just going to get my my woodworking debris, my little bits off of here. There we go. Now I have ruined bead mats by using packing tape or lint rollers or something like that to clean my bead mats before, because it adheres to the nap and pulls the nap out. So I tend to just maybe scrape along the top with my bead scoop in order to clean it. So that's just something that I do. Alright. I'm just gonna string these guys along one by one for this strand, because that's what I envisioned, was having these kind of fanning out like that. Just kind of strung along between each of these for my second strand. And yes, I am wearing my first bracelet on my wrist. I think with all of these sort of fall theme bracelets that I'm making, that a lot of them could probably stack with each other on your wrist, and you could just have the funnest, most coziest wrist on the planet with all of these. Now, I'm just going to see how long this is when it's strung on. It's entirely possible that I might need to add more beads to either end, or add a couple of things in between in order to get this to be the same length, or, you know, to fit the same wrist width as the other. Actually, that leaf is damaged. It is missing a chunk. So I'm going to put it over here with this other leaf that was damaged. I had 2 damaged leaves in my box. That is okay. Alright. Now that is definitely not going to be long enough. So let's figure out what we're going to put on either side of that, because I love this bit in between. Absolutely love that. So maybe these giraffe beads, these giraffe fire polish beads. Up along the sides. This needs to be longer than that does in order for it to fit the same way, because these larger beads move it further away from the center of the wrist. So let's get this strung and see. See how long that is. If I might, maybe I should have left this other end unstrung, but that is okay, because this is how we make sure that our bracelet actually fits. Amber is the color of your energy. So that's a little bit longer, but not that much longer. But I'm not sure that this is going to be the right length. Still for this, actually, let me, because this is going to tell me better about what length that's going. Okay. Yep, this one definitely needs a few more beads on each end. So the first little bit that I had pulled out, I think, was the right amount. So let's go back on. You know what? I'm leaving this in here because I think it's good to see that not everything works out the first time you string something. That sometimes you've got to unstring it, and then unstring it, and then unstring it. That's just, it's part of jewelry design. It's part of making things, is trying new things out, seeing if it works, and if it doesn't, start over, do something else. I think that is an important thing to keep in a video, is showing you when things don't work out the first time. You know? And ways that you can do it. I know in a really long video like this, where we are doing several projects, that might be frustrating for some. And again, I do have ways for you to skip ahead if you would like to. There we go. Wanna be like you. Alright, and yes, that is longer somewhat. Just gonna twist this open with my fingers real quick and slide these on this end for the try-on portion of this, for seeing how well this will fit. I do believe that I might need just a little more length on this one, but I am going to run out of wire soon. So I can add more jump rings if I need to for this. Just doing one more here. Actually, no, I want it to be balanced. We'll use extra jump rings if we need to make it a little bit longer. That's how we can adjust that. So I'm going to make a loop here on this end. Again, we're assembling it using jump rings, so I can just start with this, feeding my wire back through here, making sure that we have a little bit of leeway, and then crimping. Go all the way around with my magical crimper. All right. Let's do the same thing on the other strand, and we can start putting these guys together. Love that one. It's so fall flavored, isn't it? Changing leaves and everything. And this one too. That's a good one. See, when you bend it and then you pull it straight, there's like all that room between these beads and that, but that's why I want to leave that there so that this has room to bend, because it takes up all that slack when it's bent. So if you crimp it when it's straight, you're going to have stiff bracelets. So always crimp it when it's bent. Nobody likes stiff bracelets. All right, now let's go ahead and get these connected to my lobster clasp, which does work. So you've got our 6mm lobster clasp, and I'm going to connect both of these to this lobster clasp. Twist that closed. And then use this lobster clasp to connect, or this jump ring, and then use this jump ring to connect the lobster clasp. That's what I'm doing. So one jump ring for the strands, and then a second jump ring for the clasp. Now it's going to give the bracelet a little more movement, a little more freedom of movement. Having both of those in there, so they can roll around as they want. Now on the other end, I am going to put my, should I do the big loop through these? No, let's do a big loop through here first, and it's entirely possible that I may need to do my little trick with the jump rings in order to fit it through this larger bead, because the distance here that it's going to need to be straight on this top drilled bead, it's a little bit longer than most other beads, but the jump ring has a curve to it, so it may not go through. I need to open this a little bit wider. There we go. May not go through with that much curve. I know the smaller jump ring definitely won't go through. Or the hole might be too small for that. So let's try with the 6mm jump ring. And this may be because the wire is thinner for this one too. Is it going to go through? Nope, the curve is still too big for this one. So what I may need to do, I have decided that jump rings are not what I'm using for this. I'm going to grab some wire, some beading wire. Some 22 gauge vintage bronze beading wire. I'm going to get about 3 inches off of there, 2.5, something like that. And now I'm going to go through this. I've got, it's about 1/3 of the way along here. I can use my thumb to push one end up that way. And then I figure to push the other one up there. And I'm going to take my chain nose pliers. I'm going to bend this back towards me, and then at about the middle of it, I'm going to bend it back up the middle. That's the long end. And then I'm going to take this other end and wrap it a couple of times around that bit. Right there. And now it's got some movement. Good, good, good. Let's tuck in the end of my wire. Perfect. Now let's grab some round nose pliers. Where are my round nose pliers? They were right here earlier. Because I'm going to do a little wrapped loop at the top of this. But I'm also going to place this guy on here. Got my round nose pliers. And I'm just holding on to this like right here near the end of it. I've got the back resting against this bead. I'm going to tip the top, or the forward one, up here, and then squeeze my pliers, and when I do that it gives it a little bit of a bend. While it's still bent right there in my hand, I'm going to use my finger and push the wire up and over the front, rotate that back jaw over here to the top, and then push this wire around to the back. And you can use your fingers or a second set of pliers to wrap your wire around till it gets down to your bead. That gives me a nice wrapped loop. I can snip my excess wire off of. Come on, buddy. And now I can attach this to my big loop, which does not need to be open at this point. Let's put that on here so I can close that like that. Let's make sure that this is going to be long enough. Use some jump rings to attach these guys to it. One jump ring for this one attached to the loop. Alright, and then I'm going to do one jump ring at first, and if it's too short for this second strand, I'll add a second jump ring. Oh my goodness, no, it's going to be perfect. I do like having a dangle because I can hold on to the dangle while I am using my hand to link that up. Let me take this one off so we can look at this one on here all by itself. So there we go. Using the Wendy's Safari Sam's Bead Box. I've got, let's see if I can do that the other way around. So my leaves dangle towards my wrist, and then I've got my chunky guy on there, my leaf being all pretty. Alright, so that is project number 2. And clean up what I've got here and come back with project number 3. Alright, so now it's time for project number 3. This project is going to be using some beads from the Softflex Wild Mushroom Design Kit. It's not a bead subscription like some of my other boxes are. It is, however, something that is released every month, and then they do a little release at the end of the month, and you create things with it for the rest of the month. The one that was released recently was the Wicked Brew Design Kit. So the Wild Mushroom Kit was the month before, but it has, as you can see, some really great like fall-inspired kind of color beads that I wanted to use for this, like this twisted faceted coin bead. We've got some resin rose beads. They have a flat back on them. These sort of ambery colored nugget beads, and a couple of luster finish crystal rondelles. So I'm going to be creating a beaded chain bracelet, and to do that I'm going to be using some 18 gauge links. We're going to do wrapped loops on these, and the tools that I'm using for this are flush cutters to cut the wire, chain nose pliers, and some round nose pliers for making my loops. And I've gone ahead and made a mark on my round nose pliers to make my loops consistent from one link to the other. Another way to guarantee consistency would be to use something like this instead. This is a 6-step bail making pliers. So it's another way to guarantee consistency, or you could just remember where you're holding it on your wire. I've gone ahead and pre-cut some 3.5 to 4 inch lengths of this 18 gauge wire so that we can start making our links, and we're going to be joining them together as we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is about 1.5 to 2 inches from the end of my wire. I'm going to go ahead and hold it in my round nose pliers, bend it back away from myself, and then using either my fingers or another set of pliers, bend this around until it crosses over like that. I'm going to put on my bead, and I'm going to make a loop on the other side. Now to do that, okay, so I want it to go this way. Alright, so if I've got my long end pointing towards me, I'm going to hold on to my link with my chain nose pliers, and see how there's a little bit of space there and a little bit of space there? That's what we're going to wrap around with the wire. So I'm going to bend that back away from me, and then use my round nose pliers and hold it in the same spot so we can get that going all the way around, like so. So now I have 2 loops, one on each side, got a little bit of space here, and a lot of times what I'll do when I'm making my wrapped loop links is I'll go ahead and wrap the first loop and then leave the second one unwrapped. But I wanted to show you just one of the ways that you can use to make sure that your wraps are equal on both sides, and that is to do a couple of wraps on one side and then turn it over and do a couple of wraps on the other side. And then let's just do one more on this end. And this is a little bit hard to push with my fingers, so I'm probably going to be using my second set of pliers to continue wrapping this. So now I've got 3 wraps on this side and only 2 on this side. So let's push this around a little bit more. It's kind of short, so that's 3, and I'm going to keep going to about 4. I think I can do a little bit more of a wrap on that side too, just to tighten this up and get it. So that's 1, 2, 3, and a little bit more. And now I have almost an even amount of wrap on both sides. There we go. And I like to do a little bit of a curve with, especially with longer beads, so that it will curve around a wrist when I do these. So let me snip off my excess wire here. And that's going to be my main focal. So again, I'm going to join this as I go, so let me show you how I do that with this next one. I'm going to do the same thing to start us off. Put this on here. Long. But now I'm going to start wrapping this end a little bit. With 1, 2. And before I start wrapping this end, I'm going to attach it to that link that we just made. And now I can start wrapping this one. 1, 2. One, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's a very untidy loop, which I'm not a fan of. So I'm just trying to tidy that up. with my pliers. There we go. That's a much better loop. So that is the method that I'm going to use to attach each of these beads as we go. I'm just turning this way so that when it's worn, that's facing out. So I'm going to do the same link over here, and then we'll do the same links with these, another link with these, and if we need the space for it, some ending links with these. So I'm going to repeat that for each of these as I go, and I will join you back when it's time to make, because I'm going to make a little clasp, and I'll show you how to do that. So now that I have all of these linked together, they are going to be long enough to be able to make a bracelet. There's a little bit of space right there for me to use my little handmade hook and eye closure. So I'm going to make a loop on this. It is going to be a just a little loop. Let me grab actually my box. Because I think I want to use just a small bead if I have one right there at the end, instead of one of these large ones. I'm just going to use a small bead for this loop closure. This will be the loop, and then there won't be any bead on the hook part, but I am going to be using this. I want a larger loop for one side of this, so I'm going to scooch down here to about 3/4 of the way down the barrel towards the larger end. Go ahead and bend that back, bring that around, so it is a larger loop than I have on these other ones that will be easier for the hook to go into. And I'm going to go ahead and make this loop a wrapped loop before I put my bead on. Tidy up those wraps just a little bit. I'm going to work harden this just a little bit by giving it a smush with my pliers. Snip off my excess wire. Add this bead. And then I'm going to make a smaller loop here. And this smaller loop, before I start wrapping it, is going to attach to my bracelet. So let's go ahead and attach it here. And we'll go ahead and wrap this. So it is a wrapped loop link, but it's got a larger loop on one end, and that's what the hook will connect to. When I get my hook made. Alright, so now with my hook, I pull off about 3 inches of this wire. I'm straightening it and warming it at the same time because it is a little bit kinked, but now it's going to be easier to work with. Alright, I'm going to start with a flush cut end. I'm just going to make a teeny tiny little loop here with the end of my round nose pliers, like that. And then I'm going to take a about the same spot on these pliers. I'm going to hold that and bend this around like so. And then just below my little loop there, I'm going to bend that back and make the beginning of what's going to be a very small wrapped loop. But I'm going to attach this to the end of this first. That's the other end of my bracelet. And I'm not going to wrap it very far. I'm just going to do about 2 wraps because I'd like there to be a little bit of space here, but not too much space between the inner curve of my hook and my wrap. Tidy up that wrap in just a sec. There we go. And I think I need this to be facing that way, so I'm going to hold on to my loop and just turn my hook in that direction. There we go. And now I have a bracelet with a hook and eye closure, and all this was made with some of these beads. If you've got like some really special beads or something, this is a great way to highlight them. There we go. That is project number 3. Alright, for project number 4, I'm going to pull out my beads and my materials, and I'll meet you back here. It's going to be a memory wire bracelet, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be right back with that. Alright, so for design number 4, I'm going to be making a memory wire bracelet using some of the memory wire and some of the beads that came in my curated bead box. This is the Honey and Spice curated bead box. It is from dollarbead.com. and it is another monthly subscription. And so I'm going to be using the bead mix that came with it. These beads also came in the bead mix, these crackle glass ones, but then we also had some of these orange swirl ones, these red ones, and then these red and yellow beads here. There are these Stardust metal spacers in gold. And I'm going to also, in addition to the beads, I'm going to throw in a little bit of pipe chain in my memory wire bracelet design. It's a tube. You can see the tube there. This is a dark brown silicone tube with some I think it's antique copper wire knitted around it. And so I'm going to be doing a little length of this. Because it's a tube, you can string it on things like memory wire or beading wire or something like that. So I'm going to be using those. And I've got these little cord end bits that will cover up the ends of this when it's actually on the bracelet. So the tools that I'll be using for this is, because I'm using memory wire, I'm going to be using my memory wire cutters. If you use flush cutters with memory wire, it will ruin them. So these are pretty cheap, and they are a lifesaver for extending the length of time that you can use your flush cutters. And then I've also got these 6-step band making pliers that I'm going to be using to just curl the ends of my memory wire so that it doesn't have any sharp bits and the beads stay on. Alright, now another tool that I'm going to be using is this coil buddy. It's just these this is paper, and you got to be careful what you place on top of it, or where you stack it, because it will get sort of flattened out. But it has these pre-measured sections that you can use to stack your beads along, in order to make multi-loop memory wire bracelets or something like that. So I am going to, what you might want to do, you can either put the beads on here directly and then let them roll around, or grab some rods. And it does come with these. I got this from Louisa at Misty Moon Designs. She has an Etsy shop. She's also got mistymoondesigns.com, and her Etsy shop last time I checked was on vacation mode. I don't know if she's back yet or not, but that is where I got that coil buddy from. So if you've got some little rods that you can put that on there, that'll keep the beads in place while you're making sure that it fits like the right amount of space on there. So let's get the first little strand out here. I'm going to start with the larger brown bead that I've got here. Put a couple of these guys here. And then we've got some, these are all 12mm beads. So I've got these 12mm beads, and then I'm going to grab 2 of these 10mm crackle glass beads, and I'm going to put those together like that with these smaller brown crackle glass ones. And then we've got these 8mm and 6mm beads like this. And I think that that would be good for one of the loops. I'm just going to slide this on here. Now this comes with some little stoppers, little silicone like earring backs to keep the beads on the actual thing. Let me see if I can grab them real quick. There we go. Now one thing when you've got, where did you go, friend? When you have larger beads, when it does a curve around your wrist, the diameter of the beads is going to push out the bracelet. So while the measurement here may say, 7.5 inches, it's going to be a little bit shorter than it actually is. So I'm going to try and get it to fit in here on the 60 for the middle one. And then I'm using smaller beads and this for the other two, so they're going to be shorter sections. But yeah, let me get these strung on here so that I can get the design all laid out. And then we can start putting it on the memory wire. So I want the middle section to have the big beads, and then we're going to do between the big beads and the ends, we'll have a section of the pipe chain, and then at the ends we'll just have some random bead mix for the rest of it. That is the plan anyway. Let's see how that works out, because I want this to look like I've got fall foliage on my wrist without actually being leaf shaped. It's just going to be the colors. And I think this is going to give me a nice spectrum of color to be able to have on there. Let's see. Let's see how wide or how long this is. I don't think this is long enough, so I think I might need to do another repeat of this section or two along here. So let's see. Yep, that just barely is less than the 55 millimeter. And I want this one because it has the larger beads, and so it's going to need that space. I want it to come out to the 65 millimeter sections. So I think possibly, yeah, let's try that. Whoop. Just going to do one end at a time. Try this on that end. Let's do the same thing on this end. I believe Louisa has a lot of videos on her channel on using that coil buddy to design memory wire bracelets, so that would be a good source for you if you wanted to see more ways of using that. She came up with it. And it's very useful if you want to make sure that it's centered for each coil on your memory wire bracelet. So let's see where we are with this one. Okay, I think that is going to be a perfect length on this, so I'm going to set this one aside. Whoop. And work on the other ones. Now I'm going to just measure out from the middle to about the 60 millimeter mark. And that's going to get me half of the length of one of the coils. And I'm going to use my flush cutters to cut my Silversilk. And I want to do the exact same length for the second one. There we go. Alright, so that's the middle, so this one will be the next one, either above or below. Right. Going to use one of these end caps. It's hollow on the inside and it has a little hole on it. And this way it will cover up the end of that pipe chain. Now these are this is straight because I'm measuring it out and making sure that it's going to be designed nicely. For that. And so I'm just going to scooch the end of this on here through this pile of seed beads, and hopefully it'll start putting some of these guys on here. I was hoping for a random assortment, but it looks like it might be a little bit difficult to. There we go. It's a little bit better. You need them in a good pile if you're going to scoop them like this. Awesome. That'll get me some guys. I believe it's just going to be about that long. I'm going to move some of these gray ones out of here because I don't really want gray on this design. I want to keep it in the browns. I don't want gray or silver. The browns and yellows and reds and golds. That's what I would like in here. This could take a little while for me to get this strung on. This is a great little bead mix of 6/0 seed beads. One of the fun things about it is that they're so all sorts of different sort of shapes and sizes. They're not very consistent, but that gives it a really sort of more organic look. Maybe it looks a little bit more like corn kernels, maybe, with heirloom corn. Not the yellow corn that we're used to. And that's going to be a great look on here with these. Alright, let me see if we are long enough yet. And I want it to go 60 to 60, and I think with one of these it will be. Yep, 60 to 60. So I'm going to do a second one that is this exact same length in order to get ready to string it on my memory wire. Or, you know what I could do is I could go ahead and start stringing this one on here, get this on here, and then just string straight onto the memory wire for the rest of it. I think I might do that actually, since that is going to do me a little bit more. Alright, let's do that. I'm going to start with this one, because that way I can just, since the second one will be exactly this, I'm going to start getting it strung on here. Now I could go ahead and use one of these stoppers on here. Nope, I'm not going to do that. So that I can adjust this end if I need to. No, I'm not going to mess with that. That's just that's too much. Whoop. Unstringing the whole thing. I meant to just pull the stopper off. Here we go. Alright. So now I can go straight from the Coil Buddy rod right onto the memory wire. Now the memory wire that you get in the Curated Bead Box, It varies in its like gauge and how thick it is. This one it feels like a thinner gauge, so it's not the heavy duty one. And that is totally okay because I don't need it to be heavy duty. Hey. Just transferring from one wire to the other a couple of beads at a time. Okay, and I'm not cutting the memory wire first. I'm gonna just go ahead and string it on and then cut it once I've got all of my beads on. But I did forget to curl the end. So I'm gonna, before I scooch these down there, I'm gonna curl the end so that actually, let's call this the end. So that's gonna be a little bit easier and better so I don't have to worry about these falling off while I'm doing that. So I'm going to take this end and I'm going to grab my bell making pliers and I'm going to curl it around the smallest of my bell making pliers. And I'm going to keep going around at least twice. And that's going to keep it from catching on too many things or scraping my skin, so that I've got myself a little loop there, and that's going to stop the beads from coming off. Right, now that has something that I don't want on here. There we go. Alright, and now I'm going to put this guy on. In the same order that he was on before. You can see how that length of Silversilk just fits perfectly on the memory wire. Okay. Like that. And now I'm going to get the rest of this one stacked on here. And we'll just do the same thing that we did over on the other side. Take the stopper off and just scooch these beads, a couple of beads at a time, from one wire onto the next. So it's entirely possible, since I am doing so many of these bracelets in this video, that I'm going to need to turn this into a two-parter. And I don't think that that's necessarily a terrible thing to do. So I think after my next bracelet, we'll get it all uploaded and I'll start working on the second part. So this will be part 1. But yeah, my rewrite bracelets can be really fun. Let's scooch it down. And see how it overlaps while it's there when it's actually being worn. There shouldn't be as much overlap on that segment. Yep, and it doesn't. It's going to fit just perfectly. Right there. Alright, now, second segment is going to need a section of the pipe chain, or my third segment I should say. Section of the pipe chain, and then some more seed beads, and another of these Stardust guys. Alright, so section of pipe chain, I can just put this right on here. I don't need to put it on the, on this planny thing. So I put on the cord end. Oop. Put the pipe chain on. Now, one thing about the pipe chain is it is silicone on the inside, so the end of the memory wire can sometimes catch on the inside. So go slow until it comes out the other side. Okay, and now I need the same number of seed beads, and I want this to be, again, a random amount. So let's pick these up. Come on, random, random, random. No, it's not coming up. That's fine. I can do it with the end of the memory wire instead of that, and it actually might work better with this because it'll be curved instead of straight. Nope, they are not going on there, so I'm just going to pop them on one at a time. Just comparing, because I have a lot more to put on here. Oh, that's a nice long one. Like I said, I like how they're not uniform in size because it gives it more of an organic feel. There we go. It's a nice corn kernel color right there. Let's get some of these amber colored ones on here. Bright red and browns and oranges. They're definitely fall leaf vibes. So it's almost long enough. I just need about, let's see, about 4 more of them. Okay. And I've got 4 right here. All right, 4 more plus a little stardust guy. Let's get them scooched all the way to the end. Why is this in here twice? Well, that's weird. I don't like that. It was a little bit of an accident. Here you go. See how much fun that is. Getting all twirly down it. going to be good. Alright, so I'm going to give myself about that much space before I clip off. So I'm going to want it to go around twice. So that's 1, 2. 2 rounds. And I'm going to go ahead and snip it with my memory wire cutters. Again, they're really cheap. I got this one for like $8, but they will save you so much money in flush cutters if you use those for memory wire, because it is tempered steel, and that is a lot harder to cut than craft wire, like copper or silver or aluminum, if that's what you're using. Alright, so same thing with this one. I'm going to go ahead and roll it back. And for this, I'm going to roll until it stops rolling. Even if it's more than twice. There we go. Now we've got a memory wire bracelet using using the Curated Bead Box from dollarbead.com. Alright, I will also have links in the description for every bead box that I'm using, or if it's things in my stash, where I got them from, in the description below. So let me clear this stuff off. We'll pull out some beads for project number 5, and then I think after project number 5 we're going to skip to the second part 2 video after that. So one more for this video, and then we'll have that done. So I will be right back with project number 5. Alright, so project number 5 in my fall celebration is going to be using some of these Czech glass owls to make some dangles and have kind of a beaded sort of charm bracelet with all of these owls as dangles. On that, I'm using some beads from the Kraftika October Enchanted Forest box. This is the Czech exclusive bead box, and so I've got 2 different colors of 8mm jerks that I'm using. I've got the kind of mustardy yellow one and the coppery one, and then 2 different colors of 6mm jerks. We've got this bright vermilion with a gold wash, and then we've got this red with more of a bronze wash on that, and then some very small 3mm jerks that are going to be used sort of as spacers between some of these. So I've got them lined up, and I went ahead and made some dangles with these owls here, and I'll show you real quick how I made them. I've got a little head pin. I'm using a ball head pin in an antique brass color for that, and I've also got a antique brass lobster clasp and some jump rings that we're going to be using for that too. The tools that I'm using for this are some flush cutters, chain nose pliers. I'm using this to make my loops, but you can use round nose pliers as well for my little dangles. And I'm going to be using some crimpers for crimping my strung design on the wire that I'm using. I'm going to use my favorite crimpers. They're my magical crimpers. The wire that I'm using is this antique brass color medium wire from Softflex, and then I've got some crimp tubes that are 2x2 that we're going to be using to do the actual crimping. So let's make a little loop on here. You can see right here the loops that I made. It's just these double loops. It's a little bit easier than making a wrapped loop, and I'm just turning this around the smallest loop on my bail making pliers, and I'm just going to keep going until I get down to my bead, And then it's got the end of it sticking out up here. And I don't quite like that, so I want the end to be closer to my bead. So I'm just going to take my flush cutters and just the part of it that is the end. It's hard to see when it's far away from my face, but if it's close to my face, then y'all can't see it. Give that a little snip. That snips off just part of that coil, but I still have the double coil going on. And then the exposed part is closer to my bead, and that keeps it from scraping against the skin or catching on things as much. So now that I've got these all squared away and in order, I'm going to use this as a dangle with my closure. So it's going to be hanging out with that until we get there. And then the other 6 owl beads are going to be over here. Now there are some pink owl beads in here as well. I thought about maybe alternating these so that we had a couple of different colors of them. But I am not sure that that is what I want to do. I'm already alternating colors with the rest of this. But they are actually really... No, let's keep going with the copper wash, guys. I will use these other owl beads in another design, but they are really pretty, aren't they? Like, they would have worked for this too. But let's go ahead and get this started stringing. And I'm going to go ahead and just string it from the spool so that I can make adjustments in length as I go, if I want it to be longer or shorter, by adding other beads to the ends. I'm going to start with one of these 2mm beads on that end and go through with these. Now I'm just putting these in between the larger drooks, like this. And drook bead is just a round bead, that's all it means. But that's what they are called. Like that. And then an owl. And then a 6, 3, 8, 3, 6, and then an owl bead. Let's add the rest of these on in that same order. I've just got them all laid out the way that I want them to go. And then once I've got these beads on, we'll go ahead and do a fit check and see if I need to adjust, add a couple more repeats of the large and small drooks on each end or not. But I love them so far. So far all my bracelets have been pretty different. This is just a single strand bracelet, but we are going to be having our little dangles from it. So that's what makes it a little more special and unique. Fun. Hooray, hooray. So it might be a couple more days before we get part 2. I hope that's okay. It takes a little while to do multiple projects like this, especially when I have to do it between work and life and other things. But I think we are having a good time putting these together. I'm having a good time putting these together though. And it is a lot of fun just diving headfirst into all of the fall flavors. Oh, that's going to be perfect for length. I'm not going to need to add anything. Alright, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and crimp this end directly onto my, because I definitely don't need any extra room on here. It's going to be a little bit loose, not too loose, just a little bit loose anyway. But I'm going to crimp this directly onto my, instead of using a jump ring for it, directly onto this. So I'm going to put on my crimp, put on my clasp, and as I mentioned when I was streaming a previous video, I have found with the Softflex wire I don't need any like wire guardians. The wire itself is very durable, so I can just have it go through the crimp and then grab my crimper and just right there on that concavity, center my crimp, give it its first little smush so it squeezes down just those corners like a ravioli. Turn it at a 90-degree angle and then hit it from a whole bunch of other angles. And each time I do, smush all the way around so it's a nice smooth little ball of crimp. Alright, let's scooch this guy down. I'm going to give myself enough room to crimp some more because we are not done with the crimping. Now this one I am going to go ahead and do a loop on the end with my crimp. And that way I can, where are all of my crimps? There we go. That way I can use the jump ring and also attach my little dangle. I love having a little dangle on the loop that you connect things to because it gives you something to hang on to when you're putting your bracelet on. So I've got my crimp tube on here. I'm going to go back through with my wire. I want to make sure that I've got a little bit of all the slack taken up. So I'm going to curve my bracelet around while I'm doing my crimping. That way it won't be too tight. I'll still have some drape. And I use just my fingernail here between the crimp and that last bead to make sure there's enough room for my crimper to get all the way around the crimp, because you do want it to be centered for that first initial squeeze. And, you know, the subsequent squeezes wouldn't be too bad either for that. There we go. And so let's grab this 6mm jump ring that I'm going to be using for my closure, and I'm just holding on to it with the end of my my pliers because it'll hold it steady while I twist it with my guy right there. I'm going to put on my dingle, add that to my loop, and then close it up. There we go. And now this is why I like having a dangle, because I can hold on to it with my finger and then keep that steady while I get my owls and things dangling from my wrist. Alright, so that was project number 5. Let me pull out the other 4 so we can look at all of these before we say goodbye. And like I said, I am going to be having a part 2. This is not definitive, a part 2 with some more of my bead boxes that I've got, some more ideas, some more celebrations of autumn and fall. So this was the Kraftika bracelet. This was my memory wire bracelet that I made with my Curated Bead Box. This is the beaded chain bracelet that I made with my Softflex Wild Mushroom design kit. This is the double-strand bracelet that we made with the Wendy's Safari Sam's Bead Box. And this is the triple wrap bracelet that I made with my dollar bead box and dollar bead bag. So it's a bit of an adventure so far. A fantastic, wondrous walk through the woods, sipping on some spiced hot drinks and enjoying more flavors of fall. And so look for part 2. It should be coming up fairly soon. And till next time, and until that happens, happy beading.